Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Trump flown to hospital after COVID-19 positive test. Yes, he's caught the coof, and now he's in hospital. No longer with hydroxychloroquine, as it happens. That was done as a preemptive measure a few months ago, but not right now. At least that it's been released. Instead, he's got 8 milligrams of a fanciful cocktail of drugs, which are more recent, in order to try and help him out. And of course, you've got the classic responses from the left, hoping that he dies, looking forward to the end, thinking it's karma, that kind of thing. However, for what it's worth, credit where it's due, as I always do try to do. I don't do it much, but there's not enough to say. The response from Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, and Jill Biden as well, wishing him a speedy recovery and hoping that he does get better. And even Joe Biden's campaign saying that they'll take down ads which are attacking Trump, does show some semblance of civility and courtesy, which I thought was really lost in modern politics, particularly in America and Britain. And yet the responses here have, from the higher ups, been quite encouraging to remind us that, yes, we are people at the end of the day. We are attacking ideologies, but we only have disagreements with people. We aren't attacking the people, we are attacking the ideologies. We have to believe that individuals do think that they're doing what's best for the world, and it's just that they're misinformed instead of malicious. Of course, there will be some malicious people, but if we assume that of everybody, we'll never get anywhere. So instead, you should not attribute to malice what can just be put down to ignorance. So for that, well done, Nancy Pelosi. Didn't think I'd ever say that. And Joe Biden and Jill Biden for being civil. Good job. But with Trump himself, he was predominantly asymptomatic. He didn't seem to have any concerns with it at all. Of course, being over 70 and obese, that there is a concern there for his health. Other than that, he seems to be in reasonable health. He's not morbidly obese, and he doesn't seem to be having any other health concerns, in which case he should be fine. And of course, he's going to have the best doctors on his betting call, just like our monarchy in the UK. Why do you think that Queen Elizabeth II has lived so long and continues to do so? The same with the Duke of Edinburgh, that of course they've got the best doctors on call, better than we could even dream of because of their positions. And the same goes for Donald Trump. So we hope the best for him, and I'm pretty sure he will survive, just like Boris Johnson did a little while ago. However, he will be the only case that Americans will care about over the next couple of weeks, or even the next month coming up to the election. And yes, you do have some early voting, meaning some people have already voted, which is a bit peculiar given that it's so far off from the election that you might not be sure of what's going to happen in order to decide who you should be voting for. And in this case, if the worst comes to the worst and Donald Trump does pass away, and this could have happened at any point, not just from the Wu flu, but from anything, then it's most likely, after enacting the 25th Amendment for the Vice President to take charge, Mike Pence, that he would most likely be the Republican nominee from the Republican ticket for the presidential election. And chances are he'd actually retain Donald Trump's voters and some others undecided who were put off by Donald Trump's bluster. And it might actually be better for the Republican Party and for Republicans if Mike Pence was then the nominee instead. Would that be better for America over the next 4 years? From a policy perspective, probably not. But from a civility perspective, probably yes. Having said that, having seen what the Democrats have done to Brett Kavanaugh, then all bets are off at that point, and they're trying to go over Amy Coney Barrett the same way. They're trying to pinpoint her on anything. It's like, oh, so when Nancy Pelosi was sworn in, being Catholic was good, pearl clutching, that was an encouraging thing, but now it's being used against Amy Coney Barrett simply because she is a SCOTUS pick and nominee from Donald Trump, and all Republicans are evil, don't you know, in which case she is going to be attacked as well. But back to the topic in question. US President Donald Trump is being flown to hospital less than 24 hours after testing positive for coronavirus. The White House said the decision to transport him to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center was taken out of an abundance of caution, because Mr. Trump began exhibiting only mild symptoms of COVID-19 on Thursday after disclosing that he and his wife had gone into quarantine late Wednesday. So they were tested, and both of them are positive, whereas the daughter is not, and so she's still out and about, of course, trying to spread the good word, if you will. The same goes for Donald Trump Jr. and Eric, who is asking for prayers for his father in order to recuperate and be back up and running as soon as possible. With that in mind, with at least a 2-week quarantine, then that would work in Joe Biden's favor, you would have thought, in terms of not having to debate. However, seeing as they were hoping to change the rules, not just by having a democratically favorable moderator, but also with turning off microphones, for example, that kind of thing, changing the rules halfway through, then yes, not going into it could work in Trump's favor. I mean, some have even said that, hey, he hasn't got it at all, but he's sick of the debates, and therefore he does not wish to participate in them, and will therefore just step out of it and try to enact policy and put forward his thoughts from the hospital bed, because we all know that he's really grabbed Twitter by the balls, and he's been able to really ride it home and capitalize on it in order to spread his seed into the heads of every US citizen, and he's clearly very good at doing that, as much as Twitter might try to censor him. So in doing so, he's clearly getting some sympathy at the moment for going through a difficult situation with the coup, because although it's quite clear that he was trying to downplay the severity initially, as in publicly, while then legally acting very aggressively to begin with, calling for travel shutdowns and then suggesting lockdowns sooner than most of the Democrats were happy to, because of course they fancied open borders more, so it just played into the closed borders nation state instead of open borders, hence Joe Biden calling him xenophobic at the time for shutting off travel from China, later denying it, but it's on tape, mate, so let's not lie about this. Just stick with your guns and say that you believe in open borders except when there's a virus and it was too soon to tell. At least go with that. Why not? But of course that is what Trump was doing, and downplaying it verbally, given that we didn't want a bank run, we already had a supermarket run, mainly for toilet roll, of all things. I mean, I'm sure you've got showers if worst comes to the worst. Do what they do on the continent, to use a bidet. But yes, that is definitely what he was doing. Whereas the Democratic side, as I say, were trying to say that it was bad, at least latterly then, just to try and say that whatever Trump does, we should do the opposite, because we're the opposition after all, and therefore we've got to keep him in check if you wish to give him the favourable view. And therefore, Trump's side will be saying, it's not really much of an issue, we can get over this. Whereas the Democratic side will say, no, this is a death sentence, this is terrible, because that is the narrative that they've been pushing, so why should it be any different for Donald Trump? So now they're caught between a rock and a hard place to try and say, well, hey, from everything that we've said, we believe this is a death sentence, in which case we've got to be polite because he's basically on his last legs. Whereas the Republicans can say, well, hey, we're going to take advantage of the charity and not really give a shit, because we are going to still keep pressing on forward, because it doesn't really mean anything, because it isn't a death sentence. And just with the other 70s, the survival rate being 95%, which is not nearly as much as you want. However, you've got to understand that when you get older, because of your telomeres in your DNA, your body's going to slow down, and it isn't going to be as vibrant as it used to be, and pretty much anything could take you out. And then you have comorbidities, and if you've got some illness, then there's reasonable likelihood you should also catch a coronavirus or rhinovirus or pneumonia or influenza, anything like that, which would then complicate matters and could take you out, or some other sort of infection, or even MRSA if in a hospital. And if you're already ill, if you're already elderly, then chances are that is going to be what takes you out as a culmination of factors. So, hopefully, using age as the deciding factor is too reductionist, and therefore a 95% survival rate is pessimistic when it comes to Donald Trump surviving this. But I'm sure he will, just like Boris Johnson did, without too much concern. And only having to quarantine for 2 weeks before coming out does leave a final 2 weeks in order to come out strong and say, well, yeah, I'm right in saying you should open up the economy because I'm in the most targeted demographic, and yet I came through this, so the same should happen for everybody else. When I say most targeted demographic, as they do go on to say, he's 74, he's obese with a BMI of 30.5, and therefore you would think, yeah, that is a more targeted group. However, it all comes down to, of course, how things play out. At the moment, as they say, he's just there as an abundance of caution, and he needn't be there. But if anything were to happen to the president's health during their watch, then of course their head's going to be for the chopping block. So they would much rather be overly cautious than overly blasé. So they have to do this. But as always, let me know down below what you guys think. Do you think that, hey, this is serious and is unfortunate and we wish him a speedy recovery? Or do you think, hey, this isn't a big deal, but it's playing against the Democrats because it's going to show up everybody saying, I'm glad that he dies. But then also when he survives this, to say, yeah, it's not a big deal even for older people like me, in which case, what's all the fuss about? As he will then be the main case study moving forward. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.